Hey guys, I'm Abby and this is my channel, and today I'm doing my review of the books I've read so far this year, which is the first quarter of the year, the first 3 months of the year. And I have 10 books for you that I've read so far. I like doing quarter reviews because I feel like every month I don't read enough books to do a whole video on, but by a quarter I usually have plenty to talk about, because some months I will read like 4 or 5 books and I could do a video, but then the next month I'll read only about 1 book and don't really want to make a video of just about 1 book that I read that month. So I like to gather them into quarters of the year and kind of review them. Like I said, I do have 10 books for you, which is above my schedule, or like faster than my schedule of what I was hoping to read this year. My goal was to read 36 books, which I think for a quarter is just 8. So I'm like 2 ahead right now, which is nice. Hopefully I can keep that up, which I think I can, since I am on like a reading streak right now, especially with a series that I'll talk about later that I'm reading. I'm only partially of the way through, and so I have plenty of books through that series to read left. But for this quarter I have read 7 physical books and 3 ebooks. I haven't finished any of my audiobooks because the one that I'm mainly listening to is like 55 hours, and so it's going to take me a while. I have gotten further in it, but audio is probably my least used media of how I get my books, so it takes me a while anyways, let alone when the book is hours and hours. But I'm going to go through the books sort of in the order that I read them. I am going to leave the ebooks to last, which 2 of the 3 have been the ones I've read the most recent, so only one of them will kind of be out of order. But I have the other 7 books with me, and they're in the order that I read them this year. And I gotta say, so far the books I've read are kind of been average, kind of more lately that I've enjoyed them more. The beginning of the year, I will say the ratings I do for each book, but at the beginning of the year there were a lot of like 3s, bordering 4s, and so I wasn't too satisfied with the books I was reading or finishing, but they have gotten better. I don't think I have rated any book a 5 yet. I know the ones that I've read recently have been close, like I've teetered between a 4 and a 5, but I don't think I've read like a book that I just absolutely love. I have been engrossed in books and like read them really quickly, but I still rated them a 4 just for reasons. But I will get into ratings when I go through the books too, but let's get started. So the first book I finished in 2021, I actually started in 2020, and that was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And it's not that I didn't like this book, but I gave it a 3 stars. I think I just heard too much about this book, especially because this was a book my family chose for their book clubs, and my sisters really enjoyed it. But I heard a lot from them because I was behind, and then hearing about it from YouTube and all that, I think I knew too much about this book, and so nothing was a surprise, and I just really couldn't connect with the characters as much. It wasn't a bad story, but I don't think this would be like a book I would pick up again to reread. So I think my sisters would highly recommend it to other people, but this isn't necessarily one I would recommend. There are kind of 2 main characters, Evelyn Hugo and the writer Monique, who kind of is the first person of the story, and you're hearing the story from Evelyn telling it to Monique, and I couldn't really connect with either character. I think Monique, there just wasn't enough told about her on like subjects that I would connect with her with. There are things you learn about her, but they just weren't things that interested me, I guess. And Evelyn, there's a lot told about her. Mostly the whole book's about her life, but she just wasn't someone that I kind of grabbed onto as a reader. I know my sister really enjoyed her. It just wasn't the character for me. So I would say this is a book some people would recommend, but personally not one I would recommend. And the next book I finished in 2021, I also started in 2020, and it also was a book that we did in our family book club, and that was One Day in December. Again, as I said kind of earlier in this video, the first few books of the years I didn't really enjoy. This one I also gave 3 out of 5 stars. It was set in like a realistic setting, but the actions didn't seem realistic. Like maybe it's just how me and my family kind of thing, because we all thought the same things, but they would do actions and you were like, why? Why would you do that? It wasn't a bad story, but again, not one I would probably reread. And with a story like this, I've read others that are similar, but that I enjoyed a lot more because there was more comedy. This one didn't have a lot of comedy, which for like a kind of cheesy romance over a long time, I expect, you know, some comedy, some funny moments, and I didn't really get this one, or get that out of this one. And again, there was just like some unrealistic moments, which I know happens kind of in every like romance, not romance, but like, you know, love story novel, but these were like more unrealistic than usual. So yeah, 3 stars. Was an okay story, but not my favorite, but second book done in the year. So for the third book of 2021 was actually a classic that I read. I've been wanting to read for a while. I've seen movie adaptations of it. It's by my favorite author, but I just never got around to actually fully reading the whole book, and that is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I do really enjoy this book. I love Jane Austen's writing and her humor and the funny situations and sarcasm that she puts within it. I didn't think it was as good as some of her other books. I do like the film adaptations that I've seen of this novel, but I wouldn't rate it as high as Pride and Prejudice was probably my favorite. But I did really enjoy this. It was one of the better books I finished in January. If you like Jane Austen's writing but you haven't read this yet, I would still highly suggest it. It's one of her more known novels, along with Pride and Prejudice and Emma. But yeah, glad I finally got around to reading all of it, and one of the better books of the early part of this year that I read. So the fourth book I'm going to mention that I read this year was also a book we picked for our family book club, but I enjoyed it a lot more. I had been watching Carrie Can Read here on YouTube, and she talked about this book in a couple of her videos, so I really wanted to read it because I think we have similar reading styles, and that is Never Let Me Go. And I did enjoy this book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's kind of like this dystopia world with a lot of very real, relatable things, but there's kind of this mystery behind of who these people are and how they're a little different, and what kind of makes the world in this book a little different than our world. There's a lot of questions of like what makes a human within this book. It's really interesting. These kids, you hear about their past growing up in like this English boarding school, and you can, throughout the book, you get these clues that they're a little different and they're not regular humans, and you eventually have to figure out why, and why they're not considered humans, and why people kind of treat them different. And it's a very interesting kind of concept. It's that debate of what makes a human and what makes us different or special, and this is kind of played on a lot in this book. I would recommend this. I didn't give it a 5-star because it wasn't totally engrossing, but it was a good novel. It poses a lot of important questions, and I liked the writing, but I wouldn't say it was like a fantastically great book, but I would still recommend it if you like more thought-provoking novels. This one definitely ranks up there. So the next book I'm going to mention, I've been wanting to read for a while, and it's kind of a play on a classic or a rewrite of a classic, and that is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. If you don't know, Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite books of all time, so reading adaptations and remakes of it is kind of a goal of mine. And this one, I have seen the movie version, and it's one of the rare opportunities to say that I actually like the movie a little better than the book, which is so strange to say. The book does read a lot like regular Pride and Prejudice, but there's this, you know, the strangeness of zombies and the training and the fighting, and some of the situations that he added in were just kind of too strange for me, and so I didn't like it as much. I think I gave it 3 stars out of 5. I understand why people like it a lot, you know, but I've read other adaptations and different versions of Pride and Prejudice that I like a little better than this one, so that's why I went with 3 instead of 4 stars. And the fact that I kind of like the movie better than the book. I don't know. But yeah, it was a nice kind of funnier read. The situations with the zombies kind of cracks me up. But if you like, you know, a quirky classic, I would definitely recommend this one. So the next book that I read was The Mothers by Britt Bennett. And I've had this book for a while on my shelves, and then last year she came out with The Vanishing Half. That was a big talking point of novels and books, just on the interweb. So since I had this book, I wanted to read it before I tried to get The Vanishing Half and read it. And I did enjoy this book. It's kind of a sadder, stranger story. I did like her writing. It's besides the end of the book where she kind of just left you hanging and left it open for your interpretation of how you wanted the characters to go from there. I don't usually like that kind of, you can sort of guess what they do but not really, but I did like her writing, and I'll probably get to The Vanishing Half, but this was her debut novel. I think it was a pretty good debut novel and I did enjoy it. I don't remember, I think I gave it 4 stars, but I don't remember, it was either 3 or 4, but I'm leaning towards 4. So yeah, if you have read The Vanishing Half or have not, this is also a pretty good book. I have not read The Vanishing Half. I hope to either this year or next. But yeah, I read The Mothers by Britt Bennett. It was pretty good novel. And the last physical book that I read that I'm going to mention is actually the second book of a series. I read the first book last year and then bought the second, but hadn't got around to reading it until now. And that is The Children of Virtue and Vengeance. And I really did enjoy the first book of this novel, or this series, and I did enjoy this one. It wasn't as action-packed as the first one, I would say, and there was a lot of anger in this book, not from me, but like the characters, and so they did kind of questionable things, and so I didn't like that as much. It helps develop them and make the story good in the end. I'm very interested to see how the third book, which I think is supposed to be the final book, will turn out, but I did like learning more about this world and seeing what happens from the consequences of the end of the first book. I do think I ended up giving this 4 stars. Like I said, I am very excited to see what happens in the next book, but I don't think I liked it as much as the first book. But yeah, the first book is The Children of Blood and Bone, and I recommend that one. And if you like that one, I would still recommend this one. It's not going to be as engrossing, but still a good book to read. So next I'm going to go through the ebooks that I've read. The first one I probably read in late January, and this is a book based off a Netflix series that was very popular, and I watched the Netflix series and then decided to read the books, but that is Bridgerton. And the first book is The Duke and I, which is the one I read. And it is a romance novel, which I have read before, so I kind of expected and knew what I was going to read. But I did really enjoy this. I did like the additions and the adaptation that they did in the series, and I'm excited to see what happens in the next season. And I do plan on continuing this series. I think there's 8 books in total. But yeah, it was a very, typical romance novel. Kind of like Hallmark movies, you know what's going to happen, but not exactly how it's going to happen. But yeah, I watched the Netflix series and I was like, and found out that it was a book series, so I was like, why not read it? I enjoy romance novels, so I read the first one, and I will probably read the other books before, the seasons. Probably not anytime soon. I think I gave this 3 or 4 stars. I think 4 stars, because I did enjoy it. I already knew what was going to happen, not in the sense that it is a romance novel, but that I did watch the series, but still a very cute book and story. If you like romance novels, I do recommend it. It's popular enough that they made a series out of it, so if you like that genre of book, I recommend it. So the next 2 books that I'm going to mention are the most current ones that I have read, but they are the first 2 books within a series, and so they're very much related, but they're probably the 2 books I enjoyed the most so far this year. And the first book is called Court of Thorns and Roses, and then the second book is A Court of Mist and Fury. Like I said, this is the first 2 books within the series. I enjoyed both of them. I think the first book I read in like 24 hours. I enjoyed it so much. I spent all day on my bed just reading. And the second book, I really had to slow myself down and take my time reading it. But those are 2 books that we're actually reading in my family book club. We decided to do a series this year, and this is the series we chose, and we all love it. I think I gave them both 4 stars, but with this series, both me and my sisters and my family, we all love these books and kind of have been flying through them. I have not started the 3rd book in the series yet, but one sister has completely read through it already. The other is pretty far into it. I had to hold myself back from starting the 2nd. I'm doing the same with the 3rd just because I know I will be so engrossed in this novel and want to finish it as quickly as I can. but I don't really have time for that, so I'm kind of waiting until I have a little more free time so I can read this quickly, as I know I probably will want to. I think this series and these books are probably going to be some of my top favorites for the year. You know, I was pretty close to giving the first and second book 5 stars, but I do get frustrated with the main characters sometimes, so I have given them 4 stars, but have been loving the series and the books, and I can't wait to catch up to where the series is right now. I think there's like 3 more books that I have to read. I know I'll fly through them quickly. Out of the last few books, they have been 3 different series. You know, the Court of Thorn and Roses series I love and been flying through, and I kind of have to stop myself from reading the next one. The series of The Children of Blood and Bone I also really enjoyed, but I have to just, you know, wait until the next book comes out. And then the Bridgerton series I enjoy, but all the books are out and I can kind of read them at leisure. But yeah, I think so far the series are really winning kind of what I like to read the most this year, which I hope continues. But there you go. There are the 10 books I've read so far this year, the first quarter. You know, it didn't start off with a lot of books that I really enjoyed, but lately I've been really flying through some books that I've really liked, and thank goodness they are a series, and so I continue, and hopefully I will like them just as much for the books to continue. And there's still a lot of books that I want to read that I haven't gotten to, and you know, I'm ahead on my schedule of reading 36 books for the year. I'm on schedule to read 40, so hopefully I can keep that up. This time last year I think I was on schedule, but then the pandemic hit and I hit a very big reading slump with that, so hopefully that won't happen this year, and continue on the streak of reading a lot. I'm really enjoying it so far. Let me know down below if you read any of these books and really enjoyed them or not. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button. It really helps, and I can't wait to continue reading this year and see how everything goes. But I will see you guys in the next video, and I will have the book titles and stuff down below in the description box. But until next time, remember, if you want to be someone, why not be you? Bye guys.